Hello, dear participants. It's a pleasure to see all of you today. My name is Yulia Belanok and I'm a teacher trainer at Skyeng. Please let me know that you can hear and see me well and I can continue. You can write something in our chat box, like plus or just anything. Thank you. Okay, that's great. That's great. So it means that I can start. Today we're talking with you about listening techniques, difficulties, and some useful resources. I'll try to concentrate more on practical side without too much theory, which you can read, by the way, in books on methodology. Traditionally, our webinar lasts 60 minutes, 40 minutes of which I'm going to share some information which I've prepared. And during 15 minutes, I'll be happy to answer the questions which you might have. By the way, tomorrow the presentation and the recording of today's webinar will be sent to you, to your email. If you have any questions, as I already told you, I will answer them at the end. Please write them to a special section which is called Вопросы, and it is above our presentation. I hope everyone can see that. We can start with you. And now let's look at the next slide and quotation by David Nanon. Listening is a Cinderella skill which is overlooked by its elder sister speaking in ASL learning. Tell me please if you agree or disagree with that quote, that sometimes we don't spend enough time and attention to listening. What do you think? Please share your thoughts in our chat box. While you are typing, I wanted to say that some teachers really neglect listening because they think that students can master the skill automatically, and instead of that they pay more attention to speaking, reading and writing. And sometimes listening is really neglected, so it's a wrong belief to think so. Okay, I'll wait just a second for your comments if you agree or disagree. Any skill is a part of whole language approach. Quite agree. We can't speak before we hear how it sounds. Thank you for your opinion. Agree, right? Good. It doesn't, I don't say that, right, another skills are not important. It's just we need to spend a bit more time to teach listening, not only to test it. Thank you. And we can move on. So really listening is one of the, I can't say the most important, but it's really essential in language learning. Without being able to understand oral messages, successful communication is impossible. Moreover, listening helps us to practice other skills like vocabulary, pronunciation, and so on. I believe it's the most important skill to teach. Okay, probably yes. I also partially agree, all skills are important. I don't think that listening requires any natural talent or abilities. I think it's just a lot of practice, and I think that you would agree with me that we need to practice listening to make listening more engaging and easier. That's what we are going to talk about today. So, first of all, let's have a look at example of unsatisfactory lesson. I'm afraid that most of us have had such lessons when maybe at school, right? Let's look at this listening procedure. Teachers say, listen to this. Teacher plays recording once. When finished, teacher quickly asks individual students the following questions. Who did Ruby want to speak? And so on, some kind of comprehension questions. Then the most interesting. Teacher looks coldly at students who get the answers wrong and tell them that they should have listened harder. So, after such fragment, after such lesson, how students might feel? Of course, frustrated and discouraged, because general tone of lesson is threatening, confused, right? Especially, it's the best. You should have listened harder. Some criticism, right? Let's think what's wrong with this fragment. Can you share your ideas What's not right here? Yeah, underprivileged. Thank you. Yeah. So some points that are wrong here. Of course. Thank you, Katina. We need pre-listening. That's right. Yeah, no preparation work. Of course. Just imagine you say, listen to this. Yeah, unexpectedly. Yeah, pre-listening. Yeah, discouraging. Sorry, the chat is jumping. One moment. I try to. Teacher didn't take the task before listening. Yeah, that's right. So just listen only once. Too formal. Yeah, teaching is not exam. That's right. Several times. Yeah, it's not IELTS exam, then unfortunately we have to listen only once. Right, no materials to help, of course. And students also don't know what information they should concentrate on. Yeah, too hard without preparation, of course. So, not to have such an unsatisfactory lesson, let's have just quick glance at some stages of listening. Of course, you know that there can be different types of listening, but more or less standard listening stages are the following. Of course, pre-listening, the aim of this task is to evoke interest, to give some background information, to pre-teach blocking vocabulary. Then it is teacher instruction. It makes task purposeful. We can't just say, listen to this, and that's all, right? We need to say, listen and match. Listen and order the pictures, and so on. Then we listen for the gist, so that is for general information. Then we check comprehension. Then we give another instruction for listening for detail. Then it is listening, then again check of comprehension, and final stage it is post-listening. Mainly we work here on our speaking, sometimes possible writing. So here we discuss some ideas based on the listening. Student can express his opinion on that, or maybe we can ask some personalized questions. Okay, so I think this information clear. I just wanted to be on the same wavelength and just to refresh in your memory. So let's look close at problems with listening and some reasons, which causes that problems. First of all, it is physical reason. For example, student can't concentrate on listening because he's too tired, or maybe he's stressed. Also, this is emotional reason. They are connected. Some maybe difficult situation which upsets your students. That's why it's really difficult for him. Then it is lack of knowledge, when students' vocabulary is not sufficient to get the general gist or details of listening. Then it is mishearing. This happens because student is not used to different accents, to intonation patterns. Then it is mental blocking. It's also really widespread problem when student is listening to audio track and then suddenly he caught up in internal dialogue. He's thinking and trying to understand what has been said before. Right? Or another problem is some students convince themselves that they are unable to understand listening. It also happens. And finally, desire to understand everything thoroughly. So I'm not sure that we always can solve physical or emotional problems, but sometimes we can, of course. But the rest of them surely easier for students. So on the next slide, you see two screenshots from a Cambridge book, which is called Face to Face. So, Igor, what was it? What's the question? Problems with video. Okay. Is it okay now? You were interrupted. Oh, I'm so sorry. And now? Now, is it better? Again disappeared. Sorry. Now it's okay. Problems with connection. Yeah, probably. Was another interruption. Okay. Sorry, and now? Is it better now? Yeah, it's better. Yeah? Now it's okay. So I can continue. Do we need to have again a quick glance at problems? So I think maybe let's proceed. I hope you get general idea and you're familiar with all these problems, right? So I don't think I need to repeat it one more time. So let's look at the following task. As already told you, these two screenshots from a book. Again, disconnection. Go over the test and teach site. Slide, okay. So I can continue, I hope. So again, two screenshots which you see on the slide, test or teach. They are taken from face-to-face book. And I wanted to ask you, which of these two slides where we test listening and where we teach listening? So number one, it's test or teach, and number two, it is test or teach. Can you please share your suggestions? One teach. Okay, right, to test. Thank you. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thank you for your answers. Excellent. So, what usually happens at our lessons? If you take standard course book, they test listening there. So I don't say that it is a bad thing, right? Because when we test listening, first of all, we get a general idea of how developed listening skills are, and of course it's valuable practice. But sometimes it's not enough, and we shouldn't rely heavily on our course books, because we need to train sub skills. So that is what you see on slide number 1. So what sub skills are there, like the most important? They are not the only which exist, but they are the most important. Igor writes, the second is like an opportunities course book I work with. Yeah, they are more or less the same in opportunities and New English File and Headway and Speak Out. They test listening, no teach, especially if it is levels higher than pre-intermediate. Yeah, this is what I wanted to say. So let's look at listening sub-skills. First of all, students should distinguish minimally different words. How to do that? First of all, students listen and imitate that minimally different words. Teacher dictates minimal pairs, and students listen and circle the words they hear. By the way, if you want to practice distinguishing minimally different pairs, you can do that using books on phonetics, which is called Sheep or Sheep. There are a lot of minimal pairs there. Then, number 2, students should be able to identify words in connected speech, something like contractions, weak forms, assimilation, elision. How to practice that? Teacher dictates the sentences with contraction. Students listen with transcript, paying attention to weakly stressed forms. Then third sub-skill is anticipation. Teacher plays a half of a sentence and students complete it with their ideas. Teacher stops at the middle of the passage and asks students what is going on. Then identifying important points made. This is we complete summaries, tables, or do such tasks as find 4 points about something. I'm not saying that we need to practice all sub-skills together, but on the next slide I'm going to show you how it is possible to incorporate listening sub-skills into your standard listening lessons. You don't have to do that every time, but if for your student listening is a weak point, we need to work on listening, on practicing these sub-skills. On this slide, on the next one, you see example of a story about Australian woman who was traveling by car and so on and so forth. So what we can do here? First of all, at pre-listening stage, we can practice anticipation. For example, look at the picture, right? What's the story about? It's also practical, it's useful task to do that. Then we can teach distinguishing minimal pairs. For example, Listen and circle the word you hear, and you give him or them pairs of words. She's driven, she driven. She decided, she's decided. So as you see, this is grammar minimal pairs, because she's driven and she driven can give us absolutely different meanings. So we need to practice it as well. I've taken these minimal pairs from the listening. Then, at while listening stage, you can listen and identify 3 important points and write down the words which help you to understand. Then, number 4, you also can teach anticipation, not only before listening, but while listening. If you look at the story again, you see a gap and pause in brackets. So, it means that when audio tracks goes, for example, but after half an hour twisting and turning, she ran out of petrol, and I stop and ask, what is going to happen next? And I elicit some ideas, like she got lost or something else, she asked the way. And the last sentence also, it was then the woman realized that she'd driven into, make a pause, into what? Yeah, and a coal mine and some suggestions. And finally, when you finish listening for the gist and for detail, you can give them a type of script, yeah, transcript, and ask them to listen again, maybe a 3rd time, and pay attention to weak and contracted forms. Are they stressed or not? I made a screenshot of transcript and circle words, weak words in it. I used a program, Monosnap. I give you a link, maybe it can help you to do the same. You can take any script and do the same, maybe not only contraction, maybe some other things you can circle or underline and give a script, because some teachers believe that it is wrong to show a script to your students. It's not true. It's, for example, when your student listens to several times and he still has difficulties, it's a good idea to pay attention to script. In this case, they get used to listening. So not at all. I can go further. And as my experience shows, not only teachers but students should be aware of some listening strategies. Some time ago, I was convinced that if I know how to work with listening, it means that I will achieve good result with my students. But this was not true, and this is not true because one of my students had difficulties with listening, and it took me 3 or even 4 lessons to understand that and to realize that he was trying to understand every word. So I gave him a piece of advice, and after that I usually tell that to all my students at the first or at the second lesson. I understood that it is really important. First of all, what we can say to our students, it is don't try to understand every word, because not most, but some of learners panic when they don't understand every word. Probably you have such students who want to translate every word and to understand every word. The link, I didn't understand for what purpose it's useful while listening. Okay, so Ekaterina, sorry for interruption. I'll go again at the previous slide. Ekaterina, can you see a screenshot with circle with weak forms in blue? Okay, I'm just I've given you a program. If you want to do the same, for example, if you work online, right? For example, if you work offline, it's not difficult for you to make a copy, right, for your students and to circle the words. But if you work online, how can I show my student the word? I use that program and I circle the word, then show transcript with circled words, and he or she listens to that. Okay, I hope that is clear. You can use another program. I just wanted to share what I use. So let's return to that listening strategy. So what I usually tell to my students, I do in Paint. Yeah, Ekaterina, you can do that in other programs. I just wanted to share what I do. In opportunities, they give listening strategy which says not to try to listen to every word. Yeah, this is very good, but not all of us use opportunities, right? And then we need to tell that to our students, because some teachers then don't realize why students had problems with listening. What happens if student try to understand every word? It means that he stops maybe in the middle of the audio track and he tried to think and to translate and to understand what was said before, and in this case he missed important information that goes further. So your students should be prepared that he's not going to understand every word. There is no need for that. It is important to explain that. Then number 2, listen for main ideas. It means that your student shouldn't listen for detail until he understands the gist, the general idea. It's also important to say this way. The first time, just listen, don't worry if you don't understand everything, just get the general idea, and second time, listen to detail. Okay, students, I want to read some messages in the chat box. Students always try to understand every word, and it is a great problem. Yes, I completely agree, and that's why we need to tell them. Some of them are not simply aware that it is not good strategy. Yeah, we need to explain that. Yeah, about perfectionism is also right, is a common issue. Yeah, and it does need to be explained, right? Then another very useful advice: don't translate it into native language, because when they translate, they lose precious time, and instead of concentrating on the gist or detail, they try to translate the words. It's a very bad habit for both listening and speaking. Then predict what you might hear, really valuable skill, and you can help your student to do that. And listen to various genres and accents. If your student wants to be a successful listener and speaker, he should be prepared for a wide range of situations. Sometimes there are such accents, for example, even my favorite British accent can be difficult to understand, really challenging for students, or children voices or adult voices can be really difficult. So what we need to do, we need first of all to expose student at the lesson to different accents, to different genres, and in his individual work, if students want to do some more listening at home, he should choose not only listening tracks where he likes voices or accents. It should be completely different, sometimes even annoying, so in this case he gets some valuable practice. So okay, so it's this some pieces of advice which I normally give to my student. It's not always work at once, but sometimes, yeah, Indian accent, right, can be really difficult. We have to listen to that, because we don't know who are we going to speak to, and your student doesn't know. Yeah, Indian accent and Australian accent is not the best. Okay, so it's clear, and we can move on with you. So let's talk a bit about grading tasks. How to make listening a bit easier for your student. First of all, keep the recording short, and no need to exhaust your student with half an hour talk at the lesson. He can listen to longer texts at home, and then you can discuss it. Then keep writing to a minimum. Use such comprehension tasks as circle, choose true or false, choose the correct picture, and so on. Why to do that? For beginners and for elementary students, it's extremely difficult to combine both skills at the same time, like listening and writing. He can concentrate either on writing or on listening, so don't make them write when they listen. I mean beginner student. You can do that with pre-intermediate, intermediate, and higher, right? But for beginners it can be really challenging. If you work in group, you can let your students discuss the answers together. In this case, before you check it as a whole group, In this case, they will get more confidence. They can exchange ideas and correct each other. Then play bits of recording again and again until they understand. So normally in methodology, right, it's written that 2 times is enough, but 2 times is enough for testing listening. And even, as I already told you, at IELTS examination, listening is only once. But if you teach listening, don't be afraid to expose your student to listening for the 3rd time or even for the 4th time. It's not necessarily to listen to whole track again and again and again. You can listen just only for passage, for a sentence, again and again until he or she understands. For long text, short notes should be taken though. Yeah, it should be taken, of course, but at not for beginners, I think. Yeah, it's note taking is also a very useful sub-skill. And then, of course, pre-teach blocking vocabulary, especially for lower levels, and use visuals, because if you use picture to illustrate meaning of listening, it can help your student. If you have any other ideas how you usually make listening easier, I'll be happy if you share them. So this is just some common strategies. If you need, of course, make it easier, because for higher levels you don't have to do this. So let's move on with you. Some standard listening comprehension tasks include true or false statements, quizzes or tests, questions, and so on. So what other tasks can we use to bring some variety into your classroom? Because we all, from time to time, we're simply tired of doing again and again the same thing. Here you see a text, and the task is to detect mistakes. Students usually enjoy that because instead of evaluating the truth of separate sentence, true or false, they listen to longer passage and they respond only when they hear a mistake. Of course, this should be mistake in narration, not a grammar mistake, because we practice comprehension and not grammar rules. So you can have again transcript and just make mistakes in this transcript and give your student to listen, just for some variety. Then the same idea, but for lower levels. For beginners, for very low levels, it's good to give picture and to describe something which they can see. You see here on description and the picture. Of course, beginners, of course, students can correct mistakes without listening. They can just look at the picture and correct. This is what we normally do when we work with vocabulary. But in this case, when they listen and correct, they get used to listening and they learn how to pay attention to detail. So sometimes for just some fun and variety, it can be also useful. Then you can do the following. If you work offline, normally you don't have any problems with drawing or marking routes. Right, you can do your student can do that in your book. But if you work online, you can use whiteboard or other programs to monitor what your student is doing, how he does that. So you make a screenshot, as you see, it is a screenshot from a book by its headway, as far as I remember, and I put it in iDrew and give my student permission to edit. So he listens and draw a route in this case. So just some solution to that problem. Yeah, so Igor writes, I would recommend TeamViewer for the purpose. Yeah, probably yes, but I'm afraid that not all teachers are technically literate and can use it without any problems. Sometimes it can be a problem because you need to then go, then close, then return. But it's up to you. Like if you're able to do that, you can do that. If not, maybe whiteboard can help you to do. But anyway, thank you for your suggestion. So let's move on to the next slide. And Also you can use some videos as a cool down. Here on the slide you see reading from a book New English File, Intermediate, My Life Without Money. And just at the end of this text, it's a good idea to give them a short video from YouTube with the same problem. And it's not necessary to give comprehension task. Sometimes let it be like listening for pleasure. Just student listens and expresses his idea. It's really authentic task because it is what we normally do in our real life. We watch video and discuss with our friends or family and so on. So it doesn't mean that we have to do that every time. Teaching comprehension is really important, but to bring some variety to maybe a bit boring long texts or to some use of English, you can use some short video clips to encourage discussion. And finally, when you worked with listening for the gist and for detail, you can make close. Using different programs. You can see a link on the slide is what I use. Probably you can use others because there are lots of them. So what I do here, in the program I removed some of the words there and give my student the same task that we've listened before, so that's our story about Australian woman. And normally it's a good idea to give such task as a homework. Like you listen at the lesson for a gist, for detail, and then again you can your student can listen to such kind of task at home, because here he doesn't only practice listening, he also practice vocabulary and writing, and not writing but maybe spelling. So this task as well. If you use anything else, any other interesting task, you can share them as well in our chat box. So, and while you are thinking, and maybe share some other activities except true or false, or maybe order the pictures, I want to focus on some useful resources. One moment about extensive listening. Extensive listening, this is listening for pleasure. It can be songs, films and TV series, reading a book with audio CD, and using podcasts. Probably you would agree that students really enjoy songs and films and TV series, and unfortunately we don't always have time to practice them at our lessons. So then TV, some maybe movie, some music videos, so just videos should be very, very short, because we don't not only listening, except listening, we need to practice some other skills. So you can give them the songs and films and TV series as a part of their independent work, so like homework. In this case, how to encourage this extensive listening, because we know not all students are ready to spend too much time and work on their own. I talk here mainly about maybe adults or teenagers who are more or less motivated. How to do that? First of all, try to choose for them and recommend something interesting. So when you know your student well, you know of course his interests, his hobbies, you can recommend something. And not all learners are used to work independently. Some of them still need teacher's control. In this case, what we can do? We can suggest them filling in listening journal. Have a look please at the slide and you see a picture. My learning journal, doesn't matter if it is my learning or my listening. The idea is the following. I give different month here, July, August, September, and week 1, week 2, week 3. Then second column, they should complete a resource, a title and a link. It can be some podcast or some TED Talk or film which they've seen recently. What is it about? Some short summary, maybe 3-4 sentences, then their opinion about that, and new words. Just such learning journal will help them to organize their activity, and they also it can be some kind of control, of course, because from time to time you have to look at that journal. Then to give them more purposes for listening, it's a good idea from time to time to discuss at the lesson. If you work one-to-one, you can spend 5 or 10 minutes at the lesson and exchange ideas. Or if you work with a group, you can use blogs or Padlet. At our previous webinar, I already told you about Padlet, and just in case I give you a link again, maybe not all of you were present. So a teacher creates here online board, and every student in your group can post their comment. For example, you gave them some interesting TV series or some film to watch. They can exchange their opinion on this online whiteboard or online board. So say if they like or if they not. So in this case they have more purposes for listening or watching, because they can discuss that what they've listened. Okay, 1 second. Igor writes, fill in table with details from listening, or order the given sentence according to the plot order. Yeah, Igor, thank you. Also very good suggestions. Then finally let's move on to some useful resources. There are a lot of course books which are dedicated to listening, especially if your students want to practice listening and speaking mainly. Here just example, real listening and speaking in 4 levels from elementary to advanced. It contains different interesting topics, both listening and speaking, and the same just listening and speaking. If a lot of books, of course, maybe you've used some of them, and if you need some more you can then ask me to give you later. Then of course it is TED Talks. I'm sure most of you have used it before. It's suitable for higher levels. Unfortunately, not for elementary, not for pre-intermediate, from maybe upper intermediate and above. And you can create some comprehension task here. You can open script to this speech and do that easily, some true-false statements or some quiz. And of course I think it's better to give TED Talks as a part of homework. And by the way, you as a teacher can develop your skills listening, and maybe you expand your vocabulary if you listen and watch that TED Talks. Then it is ESL video. Thank you, Olga. ESL lab, yeah. Different levels. Yeah, at eslvideo.com we also have different levels, beginner and elementary and intermediate. What is good about this website? Because they have short video fragments with comprehension quizzes. You don't have to invent anything. You can watch this both at the lesson or as a homework. The same British Council, they have listening podcasts for elementary students, and videos. All videos come with comprehension tasks. It means that your student can work independently. It's again learning British Council. Then another useful website, if your student needs more practice in sub skills. Such as distinguishing weak forms. We cite how it works. He listens to the sentences, so he hears the sentence, and she or he should type it here and then press check. Yeah, and the system will check it. Unfortunately, it's suitable for levels not lower than pre-intermediate, because of vocabulary is rather difficult and the tempo of speech is high. So, but if your pre-intermediate or maybe intermediate student still has difficulties with sub skills, it's a very good website. He can use it on his own. Okay, yeah, BBC programs, yes, of course. Yeah. Then news in Easy English. Of course, there are a lot of websites with news, but what is good about this website? First of all, it is that it has comprehension quizzes, vocabulary quizzes here. You don't have to think. And secondly, if you look at the picture, below the picture, you see there are two modes, slow and fast. So it means that your student can listen to this audio in two modes, in slow and fast. So, can you give the link? Ksenia, what link? You mean link to these resources? You will get presentation tomorrow and there will be all links there. Or if you click now on the section вопросы, click on it now, you see the ссылка на презентацию. So you can click on it and there will be all their previous one. You mean dictation? That one. So go to section вопросы, download presentation, and there clickable link. Yeah, you can use it. Okay, so I return to news, right? So into mode, slow and fast. So your student can listen to both of them. By the way, there is another thing where we have choice between slow and fast listening. It's some stories with audio tracks. Here, maybe quality of the sound is not the best. But again, if your student is not a confident speaker, he can listen in a slow mode. And then another, there are many interesting websites. Of course, another good site with news and levels. Yeah, Olga, I like it very much, but as far as I remember, news and level, there are no comprehension tasks there. So then another amazing website which I like very much, lyricstraining.com. Here your student can listen to his favorite songs, complete the gaps. So it is songs, subtitles, and gaps in the sentences. He should complete it. And the higher the level, the more words he has to complete. They say that it is suitable for beginners, but I'm not sure. Of course, you can use this website if your student is high elementary or even better pre-intermediate. Любовь writes, lyrics training is great. My students like it very much too. Yeah. Normally I don't use it at the lesson because, as I already told you, I want to practice other skills as well. And this, like news and songs and movies, I try to give them as a homework because they can do that without me. Of course, listen many times to one and the same line. And the last one, in case you don't know where to get books accompanied by CDs, you can use Macmillan website, or of course there are hundreds of different resources. I just don't have enough time to give all of them, and this is everything what I prepared. And now I'm ready to answer your questions, to respond to your comments. So if you have any, please write them in section вопросы, because if you write them in the chat box, it can jump and I can miss the questions. Olga writes, even beginner mode at the site is quite difficult. Right, Olga, you mean lyrics training? Yeah, of course, it's impossible for beginner to complete. Maybe from high elementary or better pre-intermediate. Yeah, of course, it depends on the song and it depends on the student, his level, because even if it's beginner or elementary, he can have different skills. For example, I knew such student whose level was upper intermediate, but his listening skills were elementary. And on the contrary, sometimes elementary students are beginners, but they are so good at listening. It depends. Olga asks, what methods are better for young learners? Dear teachers, can you please write questions in section вопросы? Olga, frankly speaking, I'm not a very good specialist. A very good specialist at young learning. I guess that methods is the same. The meaning will be only in content which you put there. What's the name of the book at the 13th slide? Let me see. So this is, let me check, it's not a course book, but it is some book on methodology in listening. This is White Good is Listening. One moment. Thank you, Ksenia. No, my speech is not great, of course, because I'm really nervous when I conduct webinars, because a lot of participants there, and when I do that, it's really, I can make a lot of mistakes. So not at all. I mean with young students. Anna, what do you mean with young students? Play and learn, right? Yeah, there are a lot of different materials. Probably I can share some of you, because I expected that there will be questions about young learners. We also have them. I can't say about very young learners, but as for teenagers, I can share some resources. I like the book which is called Boost Listening. I will give you a link one moment. There are several parts there. Thank you, Sofia. So this for teenagers, as already told you, Boost Listening one. Then there are some songs and chants for children here, and maybe some songs also, because mainly at Skyeng we work with adults. It is teaching one-to-one. That's why, unfortunately, I can't share my experience when it comes to young learners. Olga asked, do you think it makes a big difference to practice listening using headphones? Olga, sorry, what do you mean? You mean when you work one-to-one or using headphones? You mean like Lingo Lab that existed some time ago? Olga, can you please rephrase your question, because I don't understand? One moment. So thank you for it. I mean in real class. Olga, you mean that you work offline, right? And you give headphones to students. Frankly speaking, I have never tried that, because if you have a CD player of good quality and audio track, I think it's good to listen to, because if you want to use headphones, you need some special equipment. If you can do that, I don't think it can make a difference. Maybe the main difference will be that students can be more concentrated and less distracted by each other if they had headphones. I'm so sorry, chat is jumping. I tried to do that. Sorry. Be positive, please get what you need. It's the best when a student can imagine an English-speaking interlocutor and tell him whatever he wants. At least it was with me. Yeah. I got much useful information. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Tatiana, frankly speaking, I'm not sure. Can you please, about if you can get useful links? Maybe not. As far as I know, it will be only recording. Sorry, so I want to read your comments. I got much new links. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'm happy that you enjoy. One question, Julia, tell please what programs you recommend if you want. Sorry, could you please write questions in the question section? It is jumping. Really, I can't find the question. I try again. If I want to make a training video for YouTube, I mean, Yulia, you want to record yourself, right, your video, and put it on YouTube. Yeah, Yulia, you want to make recording of yourself, right? Or of some other materials, because Yulia, can you please write what you want to make? Yes, your video. Then in this case, let me share a program which I usually use. I use this program, FreeX Webcam Recorder. I tried different programs, but I've chosen this one. You have to install that to your computer, and you can make as many videos as you like. But if you want to make video for YouTube with materials, you can use another program, such as, one moment, it is called Ice Cream Screen Recorder. Ice Cream Screen Recorder. You can use it if you want to record what is going on, so what is going on your computer. Thank you very much. Webinar is brilliant as usual. Thank you, Nadezhda. And useful. So, thank you, Любовь. Ekaterina Kam, Tasia Studio. Okay, thank you. It's my first webinar, then will be next webinar, we'll get a letter. Natalia, we need to ask our moderator about next webinar and where will be a letter. Indicam. Anya, can you please write how teachers will find out about the next webinar? Okay, thank you, Ksenia. Of course, try that. Enjoyed a lot. Great recommendation. Thank you, Yulia. I enjoyed that too, and I feel great when I'm helpful to you. So, thank you, everyone. And if you have no other questions, I think it's time to finish our webinar. I hope it was really useful for you. And see you next time. Thank you very much. If you still have any questions, you can email or maybe write to this chat. I will be here for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. You were incredible and you were very good and active listeners. Thank you and goodbye.